We're talking about a big update. The Mets have signed Frankie Montas. You guys might have seen this the last 2 days on social media. So we're starting to see that rotation be built right now. And Frankie Montas, how do you feel about it, John?
Frankie Montas is a guy who has had a lot of success in his major league career. We saw his strikeout rate jump from 19% as a Red to just under 29% as a Brewer. We saw his xFIP have a dramatic drop. That is expected FIP. So those are what a pitcher can control. Strikeouts, walks, hit batsmen, and home runs. You take away the defense because a good defense behind a pitcher, we know that makes a whale of a difference. If you can isolate that and solely focus on what a pitcher can control, and then the expected FIP, it takes into things like league averages, ballpark averages, things like that. So if you play in a bandbox, you don't get as hurt by it. We saw his xFIP drop from 4.69 with the Reds to 3.56 as a member of the Brewers. So he was doing a great job controlling the controllables.
Hey, thanks for meeting us at the Apple. I'm Vito Calisi. That's Jonathan Barron, and we're here for an off-season episode. We're talking about one of the Mets' first moves of the offseason, signing Frankie Montas, starting to really put that rotation together after we got some empty spots from last year's free agents because, you know, obviously Jose Quintana's contract ended last year. Luis Severino's contract ended year. Sean Manaea's contract ended last year. So we're starting to see that rotation be built right now. And Frankie Montas, how do you feel about it, John?
Well, what's up? And yeah, we got some news. The news came out earlier in the week that the Mets had agreed to Frankie Montas. And Frankie Montas is a guy who has had a lot of success in his major league career. He had an interesting 2024 season. The Reds gave him $16 million for 1 year after a completely lost season in 2023. That was when he was a member of the Yankees. The Yankees the year before, they acquired Frankie Montas as they were making a playoff push. And they had high hopes for Frankie Montas, who struggled when he got to the Bronx down the stretch, and then he had the shoulder injury that kept him out basically all of 2023, and it was a big loss for the New York Yankees. But he bounced back in 2024, and as we saw with Sean Manaea in 2024, make a midseason adjustment, Frankie Montas did the same thing when he got to Milwaukee, and it helped him have a lot of success. And overall, if you look at the raw numbers that Montas posted in 2024, they don't jump off the page as so exciting necessarily. But then when you sort of peel back like an onion and you look at the differences between his time in Cincinnati and his time in Milwaukee, and we'll get into those a little bit, there's a lot to like here. And it's another short-term deal the Mets are giving to pitchers. We saw virtually around the same time, by the way, in late November, early December 2023, the Mets give Luis Severino a 1-year deal. We saw a very similar contract to this one that they gave to Sean Manaea, 2 years with an opt-out. Obviously, Sean exercised the opt-out, and the Mets once again going to that shorter term type deal where your pitcher is super motivated and you're not bogging yourself down or locking yourself into a long-term deal because obviously injuries happen and all sorts of variables come whenever you do add pitchers. So you asked me how I feel about it. I like it a lot. I think it's the first of many additions to this rotation, and once again, that front office, headed up by David Stearns, masterclass.
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious comparison is Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, similar deals, coming on a prove yourself type situation to maybe earn more money in the future, like we might see in this offseason for some of those guys. And Frankie Montas, like you said, very talented pitcher, 5-pitch mix, was able to use a lot of different things last year. And we saw that Jeremy Hefner likes using guys who, as you kept saying last year, like to throw the kitchen sink, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned the 5-pitch mix, and I talked about the differences between Cincinnati Red Frankie Montas and Milwaukee Brewer Frankie Montas. And here are the two big differences from Cincinnati and Milwaukee for Montas in 2024. When he was in Cincinnati, he had a lower arm angle. And a lot of people credited that to the shoulder injury that kept him out all of 2023. And when he got to Milwaukee, the Brewers had him raise that release point a little bit. And what we saw was a higher fastball velocity, four-seam fastball velocity, about a full tick upwards, and also about a full inch more of IVB, induced vertical break. And I've talked about that previously on the podcast. That is basically the baseball fighting gravity. When you throw an object, over time, eventually, it will fall because of gravity. So the more IVB you have on a pitch, especially a four-seam fastball, the more rise you get on a pitch, or the lack of it dropping, the more that you're likely to get a batter to swing under that pitch. So Montas made that mechanical adjustment in Milwaukee, and it paid dividends. And the other thing is that the Brewers had to move a little bit away from the four-seam fastball when he got to Milwaukee. He was throwing the sinker more. He was throwing his cutter more. He had success in those ways. And he manages and navigates lefties and righties different. His big swing and miss pitch is his splitter. nasty pitch, had a whiff rate over 42% last year. Against lefties, as we've seen with Kodai Senga, it's a very, very effective pitch. The changeup that kind of drops off the table. And against righties, it's the slider. And the slider also improved a lot when he got to Milwaukee, had more depth, had more bite, and he was throwing it harder. So you talked about the 5-pitch mix. He also has a cutter that is extremely effective against left-handed batters. So Montas has a lot of tools. And I think, once again, we saw last year, Luis Severino comes to the Mets. Hadn't been healthy in a full season since 2018. Comes to the Mets, has a great season. We see Sean Manaea come to the Mets. The previous 2 years, they didn't go well for Sean Manaea whatsoever. He comes here, he makes a couple adjustments, the Mets get their hands on him. Sean Manaea received a Cy Young vote in 2024. The Mets have become that team, or one of those teams, there are many in baseball, who pick a guy up and get the most out of him. And a team that you see a guy go there and you say, he's probably going to find something. They're probably going to really, really get their hands on him and make the most out of him. And that's what good teams do. And that's what teams that are advanced in scouting and analytics and technology and all these things that we've seen the Mets make improvements in over the last few seasons, especially in the Steve Cohen era. That's why getting a guy like Frankie Montas is so exciting, because he has the raw ability. Now it's about helping him execute to the best of his ability.
You know, we've talked a lot about this pitching lab, and the player development here seems to really have a good handle on like what they can get out of a player. And until you said what you just said, I didn't even put it together that we talk about this all the time. And the Mets are, like you said, becoming a team like that, where we look at the Rays, and anytime a team makes a trade with the Rays, you go, oh, this guy's going to turn out to be a stud in a few years, isn't he? Like, they're going to fix something in him. And as you said that, I was like, oh, wow, John's right. Like, the Mets are becoming a team where you see them make a deal like this. And maybe the first few tweets are like, hey, what are the Mets doing here? But then you start seeing those tweets and those opinions grow and grow. And then people look further into the data and look further into what we've seen from Frankie Montas. And they're like, oh, wait, no, there's something here that the Mets see. And it feels like they're going to be able to figure this out. So, yeah, I mean, like, it's just another example of like why it is so easy to trust in the process of this front office. And look, I'm very excited, and the similarities with Sean Manaea, like you said, I mean, also another former Oakland A, you know,
another former Oakland,
Oakland A. I would say that's the biggest comparison there.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that.
You don't like the Sacramento A's comparison?
No.
Did you see?
That's not my favorite one.
Were you the one who told me about their acronym?
Yeah, ATH.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to Frankie Montas and
You love going on tangents, and then anytime I go on one, you're like, oh, anyway, bloop, blop.
Yeah, I don't know about the Oakland A's one. They're not a thing anymore.
I know. I was saying you were the one who told me that they have a new acronym. I was excited.
They do have a tri-code. It is not SAC. It is ATH. As for Frankie, all the improvements that he made in Milwaukee, all the adjustments that were made, we really saw it pay off in terms of swing and miss. And he's not the biggest swing and miss guy in the world. He was a little bit more so back when he was with Oakland, but we saw his strikeout rate jump from 19% as a Red to just under 29% as a Brewer. We saw his xFIP have a dramatic drop. That is expected FIP. So those are what a pitcher can control: strikeouts, walks, hit batsmen, and home runs. You take away the defense, because a good defense behind a pitcher, we know that makes a whale of a difference. If you can isolate that and solely focus on what a pitcher can control, and then the expected FIP, it takes into things like league averages, ballpark averages, things like that. So if you play in a bandbox, you don't get as hurt by it. We saw his xFIP drop from 4.69 with the Reds to 3.56 as a member of the Brewers. So he was doing a great job controlling the controllables. And so for me, you know, people saw what the Dodgers did by going out and adding Blake Snell. And everyone loves an ace, right? Everyone loves a big shiny toy. The term ace is a buzzword in baseball, especially in these spaces where you're talking, you're debating. I get it. It's the beginning of December. The winter meetings are right around the corner. We're a little bit bored. We've seen a little bit of movement. We saw Yusei Kikuchi sign with the Angels, an interesting contract that might set the market for some future deals that we see. We saw the aforementioned Blake Snell, and now we see the Mets kind of jump the market with Frankie Montas. They gave him a deal that was great for Montas, and a deal for the Mets that's great as well, paying him $17 million a year. It's $1 more million than the Reds gave him last year. And the Mets have now solidified one of the vacancies that you mentioned in the starting rotation. And what did we see last year with this Mets rotation, especially from that mid-June point through the end of the season? We saw consistency. We saw guys taking the ball every 4 or 5 days, and it might be a 5-day thing. The 6-man rotation is really becoming a trend in baseball. And we saw steadiness in the rotation. We didn't see anyone going out there giving up 7 runs by the end of the second inning. And people say, oh, you need the ace, And I was having this conversation with Tommy Cardone yesterday. And I've said this here on this podcast. I've said it to you in just the many conversations we have. You don't need a big, shiny, flashy ace. You need consistency in the starting rotation. You need steadiness. If you have a rotation of a bunch of guys who are quote-unquote 3 starters, and I hate labels, but quote-unquote 3 starters, and you're throwing that out there every day, you've got a leg up. You've got yourself a leg up. And this is incredible depth. Not that he's a depth piece. Frankie Montas was signed to take the ball every 4 or 5 days for the New York Mets. But this is the kind of an ad that makes it a deep, long rotation that gives you the edge against another team who's throwing what really is a quadruple A starter. That's why I love this deal, because the Mets are once again building out a rotation that's not going to have that, oh, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, last year we talked about this. I don't think we talked about this ever on the show, but off air we talked about how it was the most consistent we'd seen in years, the Mets rotation, where guys were making their starts.
There was no black hole in the rotation.
No. But I even mean like the level of, we saw guys make their starts outside of Kodai Senga having a weird injury that was out the whole season. Right. Everybody else was seeming to make their starts. You had a Christian Scott injury, obviously, but like there was only one, and I'm not going to name any names. There was only like one weird start that I had forgotten about that you reminded me about.
Was it Julio Teheran?
Yeah. That was the only.
Why couldn't you say his name?
Well, I didn't want to call somebody out and say that was a weird start. I'm just saying it wasn't
a starter.
That was a one-time thing, right?
It was.
So, but my point is this: we saw the consistency last year, and one of the things that we've preached with this Mets player development and this pitching lab and what Jeremy Hefner and his staff does, keep guys healthy, gets them their highest innings they've seen in years. We saw Sean Manaea, highest innings pitched of his career. Luis Severino. Just was able to pitch at a level he had not been able to pitch at for years.
6 years.
So there
to
is
be exact. 6 years.
So many benefits to being a part of this team and taking a project like that. And then what you hope for on this 2-year deal with a player option is you're hoping that at the end of this 1 year, everybody wins. You're hoping Frankie Montas is like, I want to decline the option. I want to go make money. And you're hoping the Mets are like, look, we did it again.
Right.
Then you can become a desired location.
And he wouldn't choose to opt out unless he has a good season.
Yes.
And there's another big contract for a 32-year-old who will be 33 after the 2025 season. So you're right. It really is a win-win situation. And we've talked about this in previous episodes, how the Mets don't have any long-term starting pitching contracts right now. And that gives them the ability to move on from guys, to know when to get out at the right time, to not be bogged down, to continuously, and some people say, hey, it's not a good thing because every offseason you're going into the offseason and you need to fill 3-4 spots. And we've really seen this from the Mets in recent years where they've gone into off seasons needing to fill spots. I think the longest pitching contract we've seen given out by the Mets in recent years was the Max Scherzer deal, which was, I think, 2 years and a player option for a third, and maybe a vesting option if I'm not mistaken. And then we saw a similar deal with Justin Verlander. Of course, those guys both a little bit older at the time of getting the contracts from the Mets, but it's worked out for the Mets. And I think that while I don't have numbers to back this up, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I do. I think there's something to be said about challenging guys and having guys employed who have something to prove and have something to pitch for. You know, the contract year concept. We hear it all the time. Usually guys in contract years, they show up, they show out, they have success all the time. Maybe not all the time, but it feels like more frequently than not. And maybe I could do a deep dive and look at some pitchers who have been on contract years and see how they've performed. But the psychology of baseball and the psychology of being an athlete and the psychology of being a human and knowing that, hey, if I do well, there's going to be a big reward for me at the end of the rainbow here. I think that there's something to that. And the Mets continue to find those guys that they kind of dangle the carrot with that extra year. And, you know, this move is, as we mentioned earlier, very similar to Sean Manaea, and we saw the returns on Sean Manaea. And Sean Manaea is looking at, probably a pretty prosperous offseason. You mentioned Luis Severino. We saw Luis Severino stay healthy. The Mets and their ability
Former Yankees.
The Mets and their ability to keep guys healthy is huge. Like you mentioned last year, the Mets had incredible pitching health luck, but I don't think it's all luck. I think that a lot of it has to do with the job that the Mets scientists and the training staff and the nutritionists and all the way down on the player development and the player performance side, the job that they've done, and they've assembled an incredible staff here, and we saw that really help the 2024 Mets in the starting rotation.
And another guy that has a relationship with Carlos Mendoza.
That's right. Carlos Mendoza was the Yankee bench coach when the Yankees brought Frankie Montas in. And we saw when
Sevy came over, we saw that relationship rekindle right away. Like that was, I believe, was Sevy the first guy we saw Carlos go out and give another chance, or was that Quintana?
It was Quintana back in April. It was Quintana. But
I think Mendoza had said he had known
Quintana was
from
a Yankee.
from like his earliest days when he was in the
Quintana was in the Yankees minor league system. That's right. That's right. So and we know the guys want to come play for Carlos Mendoza. Yeah. We know that too. And let's not forget the Milwaukee Brewers, who had run away with the division and were looking to make a deep postseason run. Obviously, they ran into the Mets and they didn't. But they went out and they traded for this player. Yeah. And the Milwaukee Brewers, it's become a theme here on the podcast. Smart team. Smart team. So I love everything about this deal. It's the perfect early offseason signing. We'll see how the Mets go about when it comes to completing the rest of the rotation, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. Wouldn't shock me if the Mets wanted to possibly go 6-man rotation. Right now, they've got options in-house as things stand. You add Montas to Senga and to David Peterson, and you have a Jose Butto, and you have a Tyler McGill, and you have a Paul Blackburn, who the Mets tendered a contract to. And then there's a whole wide world of free agents and, of course, trade opportunity that we've talked about as well. So we don't know anything, but I do believe this is the beginning of the Mets adding to that starting rotation and that mix of guys, not the end of it. And I'm very excited to see who else they bring in as the Mets go about adding and starting to build another very successful starting rotation, because it was the pitching. It truly was the starting pitching in 2024 that helped spark the turnaround and sustained that turnaround throughout that treacherous West Coast trip in late August. Throughout September, the Mets starting pitching was why they made the playoffs and had success in the postseason as well. So a great start for this front office. And David Stearns, we trust, man. That's it. That's all there is to it. Yeah. That's all there is to it. This franchise and this fan base is so lucky to have him and all the great people in the front office running the show and just, I don't want to say outsmarting the competition, but we've got ourselves a nice leg up, and it's so nice to say that.
It's a different feeling of like being in like high school or even in college when like I would be on Twitter and I would be scrolling and seeing what the Mets were doing. And now I go, oh, wow, like the Mets are doing this right now. As opposed to back then, I would go, oh, wow, the Mets are doing this right now.
Yeah, there's no more Aaron Laffey's taking the ball.
So it's exciting. And, you brought up all those internal options we have right now. Obviously, free
agency. That wasn't even minor leaguers. That was just,
and I was just about to bring up.
Man, yeah.
There's also guys at AAA that you could see make their major league debuts next year. We could see Brandon Sproat come up. We could see Blade Tidwell come up. There's other options. There's guys like Mike Vasil and Dom Hamill.
Don't forget Nolan McLean. Reached AA last year, college guy, Oklahoma State.
So there's a lot of options for this Mets team in 2025, and it's going to be a very exciting season. But why don't we move on? Why don't we talk about some other things going on in baseball right now? Do you want to talk about the golden at bat rule? Because I thought
we were going to talk about Wicked. No one wants to hear about this. Everyone's mad about this golden at bat rule.
Why is everybody mad about the golden? Well, first of all,
go on Twitter.
If you didn't hear, Rob Manfred went on a podcast. He went on the Varsity podcast with John Arend, and he said that the golden at bat rule has been getting buzz. And the golden at bat rule is the concept that would allow a team to pick one at bat in every game to send up its best hitter, even though it's not their turn to hit.
What about if we had a golden ball? Where
you mean like Dubai?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, they do. Yeah,
Dubai has. I think they have a money ball.
Yeah, a money ball. Yeah. It's like the 3-point shooting contest, also.
Yeah.
No, look, I think that finding ways to spice up the game is great. Whether ideas wind up being implemented or not.
No, this is so fun.
No,
this is so
I know.
I
know it's down the road.
At spring training.
I know it's down the road.
It hasn't been done in minor.
What I was going to say was I like the constant thinking of evolution.
The openness.
Yes. And
the idea that Rob Manfred is even talking about this. I like that it's we grew up in an era of baseball where you weren't even allowed to celebrate a home run.
Right. And we talked about that yesterday with Jay and Darryl Strawberry, and now it's much different. And, for rules to be implemented, the PA and the owners have to agree. And so we're very far from that. But for baseball to be thinking these outside the box, fun, new ideas. I mean, you look at the NBA. The NBA one day is going to have a 4-point line. You heard it here first on the podcast. With the in-season tournament, which even 10 years ago would be a crazy far-fetched idea. And the NBA goes ahead and does it. So I like the thinking. I like the outside the box thinking.
How lit would it be in a game if that actually happened? Like stadium atmosphere wise?
I think what could be cool is if you take a guy out of the game, maybe give a team the ability to reinsert a player into a game as well.
So it has to be a trade. It's not just like you don't just get the.
No, I'm saying like if you pinch hit for a player, he can still be available. You get one free pass to bring a guy back into a game later. Okay. That could be fun too.
Yeah,
that could be fun too.
I just like anything to increase the theatrics of a game.
Of course, and baseball had a great season in 2024.
Yeah.
I was talking about this earlier today. MLB really had a theatric season. A lot of drama. The playoffs were great. The regular season was fun. What Shohei Ohtani did was next level. We've never seen it before. You had markets that we haven't seen compete in a few years, get involved in the postseason. The Royals make the postseason. A few others that I'm not remembering right now.
Probability charts were all the rage this year.
You had it was really a great season. The New York Mets were once again prominent in Major League Baseball. That's good for the sport. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. It absolutely is. Marketing in baseball across the board was great. So this just continues to help our sport grow and thrive, and I love it. So golden at bat rule, whether it comes into play or not at some point, it's all about the thought process, because not every idea is going to work, but as we know, think outside the box. Eventually, you throw enough things against the wall, you're going to get something that's going to stick, and it's going to work out well.
It's kind of like that the All-Star game, the home run derby that has yet to happen, where if the game goes into extras, I think it's after the 11th.
Yeah, we can't. That's no good.
No, but I'm saying that John, as
I'm out on that one. I'm out on that one.
As you look at your phone and you ignore me, I'm
not ignoring you.
That I'm saying that these are just fun things that are out there. And my point was, this is so far away, it's not even being discussed more on the podcast. We have another thing that is yet to be even seen in the situation that's been proposed.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to because I was listening to your home run derby to decide a game.
Yeah. I understand it would be crazy for a regular season game.
I don't like the shootout in the NHL.
What about the All-Star game? You don't think that would be fun in the All-Star game?
The All-Star game is something.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about a regular season baseball game. The runner on second rule, I know a lot of people, especially older folk who have been watching this game for 40, 50 years, still can't wrap their head around that one. 19-inning games are good for nobody.
Yeah.
They're bad for the fans. They're bad for both teams.
I'm not going to kowtow to you. I like the home run derby. If
for a regular season game,
if we go 13 innings, if we go 13 innings, I'll take a home run derby.
Games never go 13 innings anyway.
That's what I'm saying.
Nah,
make it rare,
because let the game end to the 14th. The new organic way,
dude. I don't know.
The shootout's bad, because if you lose that,
people love a shootout.
No, they don't. People love 3-on-3 in hockey. People want to see 3-on-3 extended. No fan ever walks away from watching a shootout, whether you win or lose, I think, especially lose, and feel like they're satisfied.
You're saying a hockey fan goes to a game and they see a shootout, they're not pumped.
I think the casual person, sure. The real hockey fan who cares about 2 points in the standings, no, the shootout sucks.
Yeah, but
the shootout
aren't you
sucks.
Trying to grow the game and get more casual fans
I
involved?
think you could probably do it, because how often does it happen anyway? Like, you need overtime to happen. What percentage of games even go to overtime?
But that's the point. We're talking about
1 in 5, 1.5 out of 5.
We're talking about something that is rare in itself. So it's this ultimate situation of like, if this happens, if this happens, if this happens.
A bit too fugazi for my taste.
No home run derby, but golden at bat.
Golden at bat, cool.
Golden at bat, we're cool with.
Home run derby to decide a game, 0.
Does golden at bat rule give you any kind of
MLB
feelings?
Slugfest?
No, I was going to bring up Madden. Remember the EA replay?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's exciting. Like you mentioned, it's theatric. It really is. And we'll see.
And I use theatric for a reason.
Because you want to talk about Wicked?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it, because we have like 2 more minutes.
All right. I mean, like, I would like to argue, but I don't think there's an argument. I think we both really liked it. It was sick.
It was great. I mean, I can't compare it to the Broadway show. Unfortunately, haven't seen it. Don't spoil it for me, please. I don't know what happened in the second half. That's my biggest gripe.
But you're going to see it, you said.
Yeah, that's the tentative plan. But I mean, tickets haven't been secured yet. But my problem with the movie was that 2 hours and 40 minutes just to get through one half, like, that's kind of crazy. That's insane. I'm sorry.
You're new to movies again, though.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I did go to the theater for the first time in probably a decade.
Like Dune. Like, you would not like Dune, because Dune is 2 parts and also both are very long.
Yeah, I just don't understand why they needed to.
And Dune was also a book. Like, Dune is
like In the Heights. They didn't break up In the Heights, the movie.
No, because it's different. Like, Wicked has so much lore. Like, this is what I want to say about Wicked that I think is good for movies. Everybody on the set was so invested in the actual like the actual IP. Like everything that was involved with Wicked, the people starring in it were so invested in that they wanted to protect it, which we don't see from other franchises now. Like I think like one of the big problems with like a Star Wars, for example.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Just go on a soliloquy. Leave me out of it.
You don't. I'm saying that what I really appreciated was that like, and I'm not like some Wicked like fiend who knows everything about it, but I do know that like I read all this stuff about Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, who were going out of their way on set and being like, no, this isn't how it should be. Like they wanted to make Popular into a rap apparently, and Ariana Grande said, I'm not doing that. I don't want to be Ariana Grande playing Glinda. I want to be Glinda. So I'm saying that the care they put into it, and then other things like the practical set, which is big. A lot of movies, what they do now is they use a giant CGI set with green screens, blue screens everywhere, and they rely on that. What Wicked did was they built practical sets and they used CGI to like enhance what they had already built out.
Interesting.
Which I think is good for movies. We want to see more of that.
You know what I recently learned?
What?
That The Wizard of Oz was like incredibly toxic. Literally, like a bunch of people on the set.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot of people died making that movie.
It's cursed.
There were fires.
The woman who played the witch, Margaret Hamilton, I believe her name is, she was forever scarred by the
by
face
fire,
paint.
right?
By the face paint.
Oh.
The Tin Man also, like the
silver
tin,
paint.
the I think there was like copper or something in the paint, or there was actual
He
like
got poison and seeped into his bloodstream or something like that.
I don't even want to go into what happened to Julie Garland on that set. She was absolutely tortured. Like, no, it was everything that happened after that movie is awful.
I just learned about that. I never knew that.
Because you're on WickTok now, right?
I'm not. I've steered clear of that a little bit.
Well, it's just TikTok. You went to see the movie, so TikTok's going to throw you those.
It really hasn't.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I didn't take my phone out once during the movie. I was warned if I did, I'd be scolded, embarrassed.
You can't do that.
Tarred and feathered.
Oh God, you would hate an Alamo Drafthouse movie.
Too long?
Alamo Drafthouse. If you're on your phone or you're talking or something, somebody could write a note and call over a waiter and say, tell that person to stop.
I was told before, don't do it. I didn't do it. It was a Friday night. There wasn't much happening in the sports world.
Yeah.
Actually, there was a big baseball trade that happened during the screening.
Okay.
The Jonathan India, Brady Singer trade happened while I was at Wicked. So, Apple Watch, baby. It's a loophole. All right, let's
wait. Blind rate. I'm gonna have you blind rank songs.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna do 4. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Popular.
2.
What is this feeling?
3. The thing is, I don't know which ones you're going to throw me, and I'm trying to guess. But if you don't throw Defying Gravity in there, then that's a problem. Dancing through life.
Dancing through life. I was just about to say Dancing through life.
4, which is the bottom of the barrel for this little chunk, but it was in my top 5 favorite songs of the entire movie. And then what's number 1?
The Wizard and I.
I hate you.
Wizard and I. You have to put it in 1, right?
Yeah, I guess 1, although obviously Defying Gravity. I was waiting for Defying Gravity.
I know, but I switched it
All
up
right,
there.
tell the people where to follow us on Twitter, because we need to go.
Follow us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm on Twitter at Vito F. Khaleesi, John at JMB9191. I thought Defying Gravity was the best song in the movie, but that's just me.
It's a great song. It was very long. Frankie Montas, New York Mets, On Their Way, Masterclass, another one.
Let us know if you were okay with the movie talk. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys right back here soon.